Hey YouTube, what's going on? Snowflurky's Emos here with another deck profile. Today I'm coming at you with my Blue Eyes White Dragon Trap Control deck profile. Blue Eyes White Dragon, card I've always been kind of a fan of, definitely a bigger fan of it over Dark Magician. So quite enjoy playing it a lot. Cool looking dragon with 3000 attack, and this is the trap control style of it that uses True Light and other powerful floodgates to just make Blue Eyes a menace to deal with. And that's my kind of deck. I like trap cards, I like slowing things down, I like big attack monsters, so this deck fits right into my repertoire. It's a pretty fun and pretty effective build for just playing in a casual environment. So with that said, let's look at the cards. Starting with our monsters, I am playing 3 copies of Blue Eyes White Dragon, the namesake of the deck, Kaiba's Virtual Engine of Destruction. It's a 3000 attack monster with 8 stars. It's a dragon. It's very cool. A lot of cards in this deck work with Blue Eyes cards, and of course, having 3 of these Blue Eyes is pretty important because you can definitely get them out on the field, and we definitely want to always have access to one. We don't want to just lose because we get called by the grave. So having 3 Blue Eyes is perfectly fine, especially because we can get them all on the field. With that said, next up we are playing 1 copy of Blue Eyes Jet Dragon. Pretty awesome card for this deck. While it's on the field, other cards you control cannot be destroyed by your opponent's card effects. Already awesome effect. Another way you summon this card is when you have a Blue Eyes in your grave and a card is destroyed, you can special summon this card from your hand or graveyard. You can only do that once per turn. And of course, when this card battles, you can target a card on the field and return it to the hand. So that is pretty cool. Just bounces a card back to the hand. It's a very resilient monster. Also got 3000 attack. Just going to become a menace to deal with. Makes a good addition to the deck. Next, we're playing 3 Dictator of D. This card is mostly just for getting Blue Eyes in the graveyard because, we can special summon this card from our hand by sending a Blue Eyes from our deck to the grave. That's pretty nice. Gets it out of the deck into the grave where we want it to be. Gets this card on the field, which is pretty nice. Now, of course, now also, while this card's on the field, you can discard a Blue Eyes White Dragon or 1 card that mentions it on it to target a Blue Eyes monster in your graveyard and special summon it. That's pretty cool. And also, while this card's on the field, while you control a Blue Eyes monster, you select the attack targets of your opponent's attack. So that's a pretty useful effect that can come in handy, but mostly we're just trying to get Blue Eyes dumped in the grave. Likewise, we are throwing 3 White Stone of Ancients. White Stone of Ancients is a pretty sweet monster for the deck. It's a 1-star monster, and of course it says once per turn during the end phase, if this card is in the graveyard because it was sent there this turn, you can special summon a Blue Eyes monster from your deck, and of course you can always banish this card from your graveyard to add a Blue Eyes monster from your graveyard back to your hand. That one's not as useful in this build, but still something to keep in mind. So we just want to get this guy into the grave so that we could pull a Blue Eyes monster out. That does include Blue Eyes Jet Dragon too, which is important because we want to get to that card. And last for our monsters, I am playing 1 copy of the White Stone of Legend. White Stone of Legend is pretty sweet. While this, when this card is sent to the graveyard, add a Blue Eyes monster from Blue Eyes White Dragon from your deck to your hand. So that's pretty nice. Gets us Blue Eyes in the hand, which we can still use. So it just makes a good additional 1 of. And that is it for the monsters. Next up for our spell cards, I am playing 2 copies of Melody of the Awakened Dragon. Melody of the Awakened Dragon is sweet. We can discard a card to add up to 2 dragon type monsters with 3000 or more attack or 2500 or less defense from our deck to our hand. So this can get us 2 Blue Eyes and a Jet Dragon. And of course, if we can discard a card like White Stone of Legend or White Stone of Ancients, there's even additional value to be generated off of it. And we just want to see those cards so much that we definitely want to have these cards to add them. In addition, I'm also playing a copy of Dragon Shrine. Dragon Shrine is pretty interesting because we can send a dragon type monster from our deck to the graveyard, and if that one sent was a normal monster like Blue Eyes White Dragon, we can send another. So that's pretty nice. We can send Blue Eyes, then we can send Jet Dragon to have Jet Dragon in our grave, or we can send White Stone of Ancients so we can pull Jet Dragon out of our deck. Pretty cool stuff. Definitely gets our stuff in the graveyard. Next up, I'm playing 2 copies of Flawless Perfection of the Tenyi. This is a card I quite like in this deck because it is just a field spell that says all non-effect monsters on the field are unaffected by monster effects. So that's pretty sweet. Your Blue Eyes monsters are of course not, your Blue Eyes White Dragons are of course not effect monsters, and so we're going to get that benefit. But even more important, Once per turn, if your opponent special summons an effect monster while you control a non-effect or face-down monster, and that's really the reason I play this card in the deck, you can draw 2 cards. So that's pretty nice. If we have Blue Eyes sitting on our field, that means our opponent's going to special summon an effect monster, and we're going to draw 2 cards. That's really nice because that keeps our hand reloaded for follow-up turns, and that's pretty important. And what's nice about this is if it's even your first turn, you don't have Blue Eyes White Dragon on the field yet, but you have one of the stones, you can easily just set the stone face down so that maybe it'll get destroyed and give you access to your Blue Eyes card. But also, while it's face down, you're just going to get a draw 2 when your opponent special summons a monster, and that's pretty awesome to have. So definitely a cool card that I have a lot of fun with in this deck. Next up, I'm playing 3 Pot of Extravagance. We're not going into our extra deck in this one. Instead, we're going to draw extra cards. We're going to banish 6 of those extra deck cards to draw 2. Pretty useful. Can't say I can complain about that. Next up, I'm playing 3 Pot of Duality. Now I know you can't special summon on your turn with this deck, but there are trap cards that are so important to get to, like True Light or whatnot, that are not searchable, that we want to play 3 of this card, and we want to try to dig for either True Light or one of those floodgate cards that is really going to win us the game. And Pot of Duality does that by allowing us to look at the top 3 cards of our deck and add 1 to our hand instead of special summoning. Last for the spells, I'm playing 1 Fury of Karyushin. This card, for the sake of this deck, just reads Add Torrential Tribute, and the searcher for Torrential Tribute is pretty good, especially because Torrential Tribute is good in this deck. So, we'll gladly play this within the deck, get a good trap card, and that is it for the spells. Next, going into our trap cards, I am playing 3 copies of True Light. True Light here is the card that makes this trap control deck work. True Light is a pretty sweet continuous trap card that says your opponent cannot target Blue Eyes White Dragon in your monster zone with card effects, which is pretty nice. And basically what True Light does is once per turn, and of course this is during either player's turn, so once on your turn and once on your opponent's turn, you can special summon a Blue Eyes White Dragon from your hand or graveyard. So that's nice. Gets us Blue Eyes White Dragons on the field. If our Blue Eyes get removed, we can just summon them back. And additionally, if we don't have any Blue Eyes to summon, it has an effect where we can set a spell or trap card directly from our deck that mentions Blue Eyes White Dragon on it, as long as we don't have other copies of it in our graveyard. There is 1 card we're playing that can help do that. So this card's just pretty nice. Swarms are filled with Blue Eyes, lets them recur on the field after they've been removed. The only thing about True Light, of course, is that if this card is removed from the field, then of course we have to destroy all cards we control, and well, not all cards, all monsters, my bad. But we have to destroy all monsters I control, which can be pretty harmful. We lose our monster presence, but basically we want to protect this card with every fiber of our being and have Blue Eyes end the game before that can happen. But just something to keep in mind, that you got to protect that card. Next up, I'm playing 1 copy of the Ultimate Creature of Destruction. This is a trap card that we can set off of True Light, which is pretty nice. And also this card synergizes pretty well because we can target a Blue Eyes monster you control, and this turn, that face-up monster is unaffected by card effects except its own. Now this card works pretty nice, especially with True Light, because if True Light gets popped and we're about to lose our board, we can play this card and protect a Blue Eyes White Dragon so it stays on the field. And that's pretty nice. That means it's going to be harder to OTK through a 3000 tech monster, especially if we have some floodgates on the field making it harder. So it's definitely a good card to have, which is pretty sweet. And then, of course, if you normal or special summon a Blue Eyes White Dragon, you can set this card again, but banish it when it leaves the field. So a little recursion there. Pretty cool. Definitely going to make use of that. Next up, we're playing some Floodgates, 3 Skill Drain. So Blue Eyes is a monster without an effect with 3000 attack. So Skill Drain was basically designed for this card. Skill Drain says we pay 1000 life points to negate all face-up monsters' effects while they're face-up on the field. So that's pretty cool. Once monster effects are out of the equation, Blue Eyes becomes a lot meaner with being a 3000 attack monster that even when you remove it, we're going to be summoning it back. So Skill Drain is just pretty awesome. Definitely going to take advantage of this while it's at 3 and let Blue Eyes beat down. Next, we're also playing 3 copies of Summon Limit. Summon Limit's pretty nice. It limits each player's ability to summon to only twice per turn. Now that's pretty good for us because we're not going to summon too much more than that. Technically we can, but mostly we only need 1 or 2 summons to set up what we're trying to do. And with summon limit on board, our opponent's not going to really be able to go into their extra deck or put up a lot of monsters as easily that can deal with Blue Eyes. Then Blue Eyes deals with those monsters and puts our opponent in a bit of a rut, slowing the game down so where Blue Eyes beat down is enough to win the game. Next up, I'm playing 3 copies of Solemn Judgment. Solemn Judgment is pretty nice. We want to protect our trap cards, our floodgates. We just pay half our life points to negate a summon or spell or trap card activation. Mainly, we want to save this for Harpy's Feather Duster or Lightning Storm or Cosmic Cyclone. Any of these cards our opponent's going to use to try to remove our key trap card that's stopping them from being able to play. We want to, just have the answer to that ready to go. Next up, I'm playing 2 copies of Torrential Tribute. Torrential Tribute is a trap card that just says when a monster is summoned, you can destroy all monsters on the field. So that's pretty cool. We don't mind blowing up our own board because True Light can just summon our Blue Eyes back. And if Jet Dragon's in the grave, then we're going to summon him up to the destruction of a card if we have Blue Eyes. So pretty powerful card. Definitely worth considering bumping to 3. But I got some other things I got to deal with mainly for my local dual group situation. So Torrential Tribute is just, good card. It synergizes very well with Summon Limit, where our opponent summons 2 cards. We Torrential Tribute. Now they can't, summon anything else. Their board's open, and in Blue Eyes, that's going to be very good because we're going to get a lot of damage in. Next, I'm playing 1 copy of Heavy Storm Duster. I just have this in here to deal with some other back row and spell and trap card decks that I face. It's a trap card that just targets up to 2 spells or traps and destroy them. Well, we can't use our battle phase, but that's fine. We're going to play this during our opponent's turn most of the time. And last, I'm playing 1 copy of Fake Trap. This is just an extra card in here to protect my trap cards. It is so important that we protect True Light and our floodgates because they're going to be what wins us the game. That if we see something like Harpy's Feather Duster or Lightning Storm that's going to pop all of our back row, we have Fake Trap here, which just says when a card would destroy trap card or cards, you can destroy this card as a substitute. So that's pretty nice. That just means we destroy Fake Trap. Now we do have to reveal the rest of our face downs that we are protecting to show that they are trap cards. But that's fine. It's gonna, the ones we want to protect are already going to be face up. Things like Skill Drain, things like True Light, and that just makes it a good card to have in the deck. And that is it for the main deck. Going into our extra deck real quick, I am playing 3 copies of Last Warrior from Another Planet. This extra deck is all targets that can be summoned off of Waking the Dragon. Last Warrior from Another Planet is a really nice card because it just says when this card's on the field, neither player can summon monsters. So if their opponent's board is open when they hit us with the Lightning Storm or the Harpy's Feather Duster, we can summon Last Warrior, and then all they could do is set monsters, and we can whittle away. So just a nice option to have. Next up, we are playing 3 copies of Naturia Exterio. Exterio is a good monster to pull out in certain matchups that are very spell and trap dependent because this card can negate spells and traps on either player's turn and not even once per turn. All you have to do is have a card in the graveyard to banish and then send the top card of your deck to the graveyard. So as long as you have that set up, you can keep banishing spells and traps infinitely. So if a matchup is very dependent on their spells and traps resolving, they are not going to like to see that card. Next up, I am playing 3 copies of Raid Raptor Ultimate Falcon. Raid Raptor Ultimate Falcon is a nice boss monster to have. It's a 3,500 attack monster that's unaffected by other card effects. That makes it really hard to deal with. You're either going to have to kaiju over it or find a way to beat it by battle. And there are just certain decks and matchups that are not going to be able to deal with that monster. And that makes Raid Raptor Ultimate Falcon a good target to go into. Next up, I'm playing 3 copies of Blue Eyes Alternative Ultimate Dragon. This monster has 4,500 attack. Now it can't be just targeted or destroyed by card effects, which is not as good as being unaffected, but still pretty good. And 4,500 attack, an extra 1,000 attack is pretty nice to have. Additionally, this card has an effect that we can destroy a card on the field instead of attacking with it this turn, and that can come in handy. Just a good option to fill out the extra deck. And lastly, I am playing 3 copies of Geomathmech Final Sigma. When we special summon this card in the extra monster zone, it's unaffected by card effects except Mathmech cards, which basically makes it a, Raid Raptor Ultimate Falcon. But it's got 500 less attack, which isn't so bad, but it does gain the effect that when you do battle damage to your opponent by battle with a monster with this card, that battle damage is doubled. So that's really nice. If they have a weak attack monster on the field and you just want to, rip through it and do a lot of damage. So a good option to have to round out our Waking the Dragon extra deck. So that is it for the Blue Eyes White Dragon deck. As far as the extra deck goes, we just cram it with 15 cards because they're being used as fodder anyway. You can use Blue Eyes Fusions. Link Haribo is pretty handy in that regard because you can send your white stones to the grave and make a Link Haribo. So just something to keep in mind. But anyway, that is Blue Eyes Trap Control. Pretty cool. It's a good way to use Blue Eyes White Dragon, and I like it because it actually uses the actual Blue Eyes White Dragon on the field, and he's doing the most of the legwork there. So with the trap cards, it's pretty well, and that synergy with those floodgates makes it pretty effective and just a pick up and play environment. Very glad to have it with the deck list. So thanks for checking out the profile. Love to know what you're doing with Blue Eyes in the comments below. I'll catch y'all in the next one.